Hello, hello, Crossroads witches and other interesting magical beings. I am so excited today because I have the most amazing book that I just had the privilege of finishing called Metal Magic. Metal Never Lies. I love that. I do believe that. And over here, as you can see on screen with me, you have Sam Thompson down, but everybody calls you Bo.
It's a family name. Yep.
So we're going to go with Bo.
That'll work.
Which is...
I've been called worse today already. So, hey, we're ahead. Got that out of the way.
I so enjoyed this book. I really just so grateful that I had the opportunity to really think about something that's right in front of me, so different. But before I start, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background about you.
All right, my favorite subject that I don't like to talk about, as we know. I am what I call a primitive magical blacksmith. And I define it as such due to everything that happens within my smithy. I'm also a priest from Oregon, so my smithy is dedicated to her. But everything that's done within the smithy, I touch. I have a very intimate relationship, from gathering the wood to make the fire that cooks the wood that makes charcoal that I use for the forge. I gather all the steel myself. It's all, I like to call it upcycled. it's somebody's trash, basically. It's but 95% of the metal that's in my forge is, this type of stuff. Use lawnmower blades and files and horseshoes and these type of things. And because I think, one, they all have a story. And being Southern Appalachian, I like stories. Things have stories that have meaning. There's attachment, there's energy. And through this process of just being a blacksmith, I've been doing this about 10 years, and I've been full-time at it, probably like the last 4. Just being involved in the practice of making metal magic. And the more that I was making people tools for their magical practice, the more the metal started talking to me. I'm very much an animist, and I believe things have spirit, energy, whatever. And then through my work, I got down a rabbit hole with studying some of the Irish lore, and my own personal experience with it is that we're connected to metal and we don't even know it. We know it, we've just forgotten it. I think all this was known back before the Industrial Revolution, and once all that took off, we got busy doing other things and forgot the spirituality of metal. Find me somebody that doesn't have iron in their blood.
I love that, working metal as an alchemist. Magic, it is the changing of, when we get into what alchemy is that what you're doing with blacksmithing, you're taking one thing, working it, shaping it, changing it into something else.
Well, and if you look at it from an elemental point of view, if you have that leaning, is that you've got the air of the bellows, right? You've got my forge, right? Forge is what actually, the smithy is what holds the forge. The forge is the thing that holds the fire, right? My forge is literally a box of dirt, right? The dirt insulates the fire that I forge in. So I've got air of the bellows, I've got the dirt of the forge. We have the fire within the forge, right? And then you've got the water that you quench with. So you've got all the elements plus me, which is the spirit of it. So you've got all 5 elements that are wrapped up in this container, my sacred forging container. So,
and I in the book you talk about the four main metals, and what I love is you work with, but I also, you just said it, where these are metals that already exist in our bodies,
right? Because you've got, if you look at them through the metal age, right? I always like to because everybody kind of remembers that. You've got the copper age, right? Because things that are important we associate with metal, right? So you've got the copper age, and we have copper in our body. It's usually not as a supplement because we get it from our food. Now, I am not a doctor.
Right.
I don't even play one on TV. Okay, this is just stuff from the brief research I've gotten. But my understanding of the human anatomy is that you have to have copper in order for your iron to work with absorbing the oxygen. Right. So we've got copper.
Right.
And then if you go into the Bronze Age, right? So you've got zinc with bronze. No, excuse me, tin with bronze. We have trace minerals of tin, right? So you got the bronze. Now there's no brass age, which I think brass gets a bad rep, right? Because they get ripped off. But we have zinc in us too, right? Because if you get a cold, and you take zinc to help knock out the cold, because the extra zinc in your body, and that makes brass. And then of course you've got iron. We look at a lot of things as being steel, and that doesn't seem to be the same thing as iron, but steel is 98% iron and 2% carbon and some other things, right? So yeah, I mean, we have all these metals literally within us. We already have an intimate connection to most of our magical tools, or just things that are around us. But we don't even think it. We don't see it. It just goes unnoticed, and my wife is,
I was to say, after I read about halfway through the book, I'm walking around my house looking at things completely different now, with realizing how much metal is around me, different types of metal, how it's being used, how it's been formed, and just picking up things differently.
For me, when I came to this kind of realization, because it was very much an epiphany, it changed my world. I mean, it literally changed my life, and in a very positive way, because my life now is much richer. I now have tapped into allies that are around me that weren't that I didn't see or perceive before. I mean, if you think about it, you've got copper in your walls because that's what carries your electrical current. Well, what a great way to create an ally that now holds that space for you to help both with healing, but also with energy. That's kind of juicy if you ask me.
Yes, I said it really did make me aware. I sort of equated a lot of this where you were talking in the book about the spirit of metal. I was thinking the spirit of the root, where we talk about, to know the root, you get in the dirt, you grow it, you tend it, you harvest it, you use it magically. But the whole process, like what you're saying with metal, the entirety of the process, and really connecting to that spirit. We spoke a little off camera, and I've made the comment that it's a very primordial magic. It goes back into the beginnings of the universe, and you feel it. And so that we don't think about how truly magical our blacksmith, our forges are.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about a village, right, city, town, right, there's different levels of people depending on your term. But the blacksmith touched everything that happened in the village. I mean, there's not anything in the village that the blacksmith didn't have his hands on in some way or form or fashion. From the boat, right? Because there's a lot of tackle, blocking tackle, right? Just holding up for the ropes, metal, right? You've got your seamstress, right? You've got the needles, right? Words are hard today. You've got your carpenter, with hammer and nails for your carpentry. Or draw knives, right? If they didn't use nails, you had to have a draw knife to help with the mortar and tinsel, the putting it together. You've got your cooks, you've got, because everybody thinks of blacksmith, I think now, and we think of forged in fire, which creating sharp, pointy things, which, and that's fine. To me, that is more bladesmithing, right? It's a specialization, right? And we need folks like that. That's an important skill and craft that needs to be carried on. But I think with blacksmithing, to me, is more of an everyday utilitarian, right?
Right.
Thing.
You know, like the blacksmith touches the teapot to the shoes they put on the horse. When we get in, I found it fascinating when I was doing my own reading on some of our smaller village blacksmith people. The blacksmith shop would have been a meeting place in town as
like
well.
The Hardys.
Right, where they didn't have a courthouse per se. This is a small village, small town, small community settlement. So go meet over at the blacksmith shop. The blacksmith himself was held in high regard. He knew all folks in the village. So a lot of times he would be asked to sort of be the judge of a situation, or to sort of be, the go-between, and sit there and see if we can't make peace in the village.
Well, if you look at some of our verbiage, right, that we use today that we don't think about, right? One of the terms people have probably heard would be to strike a deal.
Right.
That literally comes from the blacksmiths, from the smithy, where they would, hammer it out, and then that would be they forge a bond, right? Another blacksmith term. And today, up at Greta Glen in Scotland, you can still get married handfasted over the anvil. There's a smithy in north of Scotland that you can still, because that's where all your contracts were made, was at the smithy, because they would strike the deal, they would forge the bond, they would, create these things that happen, because like you said, everybody had to go to the blacksmith. Everybody knew him. There was always, you were dropping off a tool, picking up a tool. He knew everything that was going on.
And there was a level, they all regarded his work as a level of magical.
Oh, most definitely. Like you said, it's like alchemy. You're turning a hunk of junk into something.
Right. And so he very much, I think our older blacksmiths were very aware of this magical power. We had spoke like, why don't we have information about this today? The industrial age, people stopped going to the blacksmith. We built courthouses. Our towns became too big. But that magic is still sitting there for us. And to connect
like you said,
to it.
Where I live in the foothills of North Carolina. And, speaking to stuff that will probably resonate with you and folks that will probably watch this, is that where I live, there's a very high iron concentration in the dirt. I mean, we have well water, and we have to have a filter to help filter out some of the iron that just naturally collected in the well water.
Yeah.
There was actually here iron forges back in the colonial days, Revolutionary War time. For me, there's two different ones, 15 minutes both directions, where they would just literally take the dirt, dig the dirt up, and dump it in the top of a chimney and cook it, and the iron would melt and solidify and make what they call pig iron, which is just a hunk of iron. And that's just from digging up the dirt that I walk on every day. So it's very much, it's very much alive and well. I mean, you can go down to my creek, where my creek is, and you can see the rust along the edge of the bank, from the creek, because there's just such a high iron concentration.
Yeah, when we were up in Asheville with the little rust ring around water, I didn't even that it's so much around us, and we don't see it. We don't understand its magical powers. Now, the other thing I want to switch subjects real quick is what I loved about your book was at the end of your sections, you gave practical exercises. And I want to say that for all you witches and interesting magical beings, it's not just a read this book. This has got exercises. It's got all sorts of lessons, is almost what I want to call them. And you really don't expect people to go out and buy a forge and become a blacksmith. So I don't want people to sit here thinking, well, I'm not a blacksmith, I can't work metal. Yes, you can. He explains how you can do it without doing a forge, how you can reuse metal, how you can start using metal in your magic. And I loved that about this
Thank you.
book. That
Um,
was just like, ooh.
And I think maybe that's one reason why people don't see it, because they don't understand it. I think a lot of it is we've lost that connection. And my goal, if lack of a better word, is to get people to go back to working metal magic. If you use any metal within your magical practice, wouldn't it be kind of cool to kind of connect to that tool as something other than something when you're done with it, you put it away? Why not create a relationship, and now you have an ally to aid you in your working versus just a screwdriver? Why not have a magic screwdriver?
And understanding the process that metal has gone through, and giving a little bit of respect and honor to that process is part of the magical connection. When we talk about how I want to be a big, powerful witch, you got to connect with you and the things that are around you.
I think it's one more step into living in right relationship.
Oh, I love that, Bo.
How about that?
Oh, that's very Appalachian too, by the way, living right. That's the mountain folk up there,
Chances are,
if
you have a lot of issues, you ain't living right.
I love it when I get up there, because I'm down in the low country, down on the coast, the Savannah, Charleston, up in that hole. And so we have a different flavor, and we definitely both have Southern accents, but I can hear the difference of yours.
Well,
and
the more boiled peanuts I have, the worse it gets.
Oh, see, now I'm like, just give me a couple of glasses of wine and you will never understand what I'm talking. If you get a couple of Southerners together, once we get happy, nobody understands us but each other.
And that's as it should be. No.
That's where you start talking about get right here. You're like, it's out. I'm almost. They're like, what are they saying?
Don't you?
But the Appalachians have such I do think they're the magic of that area has been talked about so many different ways. And then all of a sudden I pick up your book and I'm like, why hasn't somebody been doing this all along? Like you said, it's right in front of us. We're so quick to talk about the granny potions, tingers, the still that granny had, but we never talk. But we never talk about where granny got the still from. All right. And like you said, it's made of copper. Who made that? This blacksmith. This is his magical place, And I know I'm now, like I said, walking around my house, picking up things, and I'm like, ooh, with it. And it's really, in the best way, made me rethink my space. And when somebody does that to me, I just love it. Because I'm like, I learned something new.
Well, it's like you now have a brand new group of friends to play with. No pun intended, but I mean, it does. It's a completely different world. I know when it happened to me, I was like, who?
I can only imagine for you personal, because you're in the actual process. So it is, a much deeper, but even just appreciating it for somebody like me who will never, ever be a blacksmith or work a forge, I can still relate to these metals. I can still use them in my practice, and use them in my reverence of both myself and Mother Earth.
And I think that's what the book is about. That's what I want to get across, is that you don't have to have a bunch of tools. You don't have to have any tools. You don't have to go out and buy a bunch of stuff. We collect enough stuff. Let's not add to it. Let's use what you got, which is kind of how we live. We don't throw anything away, and we'll use everything at some point. you know.
And I love that again, you're upcycling, recycling, reusing. All right, how important that is to the magic of making it something different.
Well, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, easy. What I make, you know, there are sometimes I do make blades, not often because it's just not my wheelhouse, but I do make them, and I have a certain set of metal set aside to make small athames. Some people call them Viking knives or whatever. But they're made out of hay tines. The hay tines that are on the back of the tractor that rakes the hay, right, to make bales of hay. Okay, so these kind of metal that's kind of a little springy.
Oh,
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about now, right? So they're hay tines.
yes.
And they're used, they're broke, right? But
Right.
as I make them, I think, you know, this is really cool because this piece of metal helped feed a family, you know, because it helped gather hay that fed the cow, you know, that people were able to either ingest, right, or sell to get money to buy milk or eggs or whatever else they wanted. So I mean, it's the stories of the metal that I have, the horseshoes that I have are used. I mean, they literally still have the bloody nails in them that I gotta get out of them, you know, and they were on horses that were doing work, you know. They're so these type of things that, you know, everything has a story, and as I work with the metal, I can listen to the stories. You know, some of them are real chatty, some of them are, you know, don't say a whole lot, some of them say way too much. And I encourage everybody to get to know the metal that they have, because it's an animate being, in my opinion. In my experience, it's an animate, and not everything that I have has that type of voice. Okay, it's not like I'm, you know, all the chatty stuff, right? You know, I see dead people. You know, it's nothing quite like that.
I
There
tell
are,
people my flowers talk to me. Some talk more than others.
you know, I do have some pieces that are what I would consider very much allies, that, you know, have that level of consciousness.
Right.
Okay. And they are the ones that went through a little bit more of a ritualistic experience, as did I in the creation of. And I've created some of those things for other people, and it's a process. It's not just, you know, normal making, you know, normal things. You know, it's a little bit different process, because but I understand now when I read these stories from, you know, the ancient lore of, you know, metals being animate and talking, and, you know, I mean, we've been talking about singing swords since King Arthur, right?
Right.
And that's part of it, you know, because the metal at that time bore witness to what was happening. And when you unsheathed it and cleaned it and whatever, you know, it told, you know, that's why the title of the book's Metal Never Lies, because it just relays the experience that happens. You know, there's no fluff about it. Anyway, I can talk about
love
this literally
that.
for days.
And I was to say, for all you, which is another interesting magical folks, Metal Never Lies, get a copy. Bo also is currently working on getting a course together where more people, he can share his knowledge. If you are in the Westfield, North Carolina area, up in the Appalachia, he does do workshops. He does get out and teach. I will make sure to, below the screen, we'll have the .com, where if you're interested in this, reach out to Bo directly.
I teach weekend classes where people will come, and I call it an immersion, because you're immersed in the magic of the weekend over the weekend. And I get people coming from all over: Washington State, Oregon, Illinois, Maryland, because it is what
I
it
think
is,
it's
right?
we don't have, like, we don't have a lot of you folks. You're you know, I'm thinking you're more rare than a druid. There just ain't that many of you left anymore. And the opportunity to spend a weekend with you, you know, blacksmithing in the Appalachians. For those of you that are leaning in, go do it. is what I tell folks: get out when you have opportunities to work with folks, go do it. And I'm thinking when I get back to the East Coast, I might sign up for one of your weekends.
Yeah, because I only do six people at a time over a weekend, so we can spend time doing work. And getting back to kind of what you said about the book, I do it in a way so you can do the work. You can't just read stuff and then think you have it. You actually have to do work in order to get it to have it sink in. And if you will do the action steps that I've got, it works if you work it, I think.
Oh, that reminds me, you just on it. I love your acronym FLOW.
Yes.
All right. And which is feel, listen, open, work. And he discusses this in the book and breaks down each of them. But that was another, you can use in all aspects of your life, a way of looking at things, a way of preparing yourself. And I loved it. And I was talking with a witchy friend last night. And I made the comment, I was like, what do you think about flow? And I started explaining it to her, and she was like, oh, this is just delicious. It is such a great way to set your space, your plan of action, I guess.
And I think that's, different viewpoint. I mean, I've been doing this for, 30 years, right? I've been on a pagan path of some sort, right? 30 years. And what I thought 30 years ago, and we had talked about this, it's not how I think now. And chances are, if I live another 30, I probably won't think the same thing.
Yeah.
But I don't have a separate life. I have a life. So
right.
My magical life is not separate from my mundane life. It's just
right.
my life. So I try to incorporate as much as I can all the time, and set myself up for success, with surrounding myself with things that I need in order for me to live the life in the way that I want it to be. I think sometimes if you're trying to separate it, you're trying to split yourself. And I think that's harmful.
I agree. I've had the same question where people, ask me, what does my practice look like? And I'm like, my life.
I'm not walking around with a hubcap, great big, now I used to. And I'm on full disclosure, when I came out, I was like, because my granddaddy always said, if you don't like this speed, you ain't gonna like the next one either. So I was like full bore, right? But I don't do it now. I'm not shady, but I also like to look at, what's the object of the exercise? Really, who does that benefit? For me, it was more of an ego thing, right? To justify my new chosen reality, right? But yeah, I think the book, I hope, is written in a way that if you don't get into working with the magic of metal, which I really hope you do, you will at least learn something that you can apply in other areas of your life. I think, like the flow, and there's a meditation in there that I think that people can use with everything.
There is a great meditation. That's what there's exercises, there's things practicals that I really like, and I agree. Because like I said, I am not ever going to be a blacksmith. I can guarantee that in this lifetime. But it doesn't mean that I can't work with metals. It doesn't mean I can't develop a relationship with them. And also just in my own space, have more awareness, like you said, of your magical items, tools. You pick it up with a different bit of knowledge. And knowledge
even if you think something mundane like the keys you have for your car, they're metal, right? And they're very much not only a protective, right? Because you use them to lock up, right? So you look at being a defensive, right? Setting your boundaries, setting the wards, lack of a better word. But it also helps you to get from place to place, because without that key, your car won't start.
Right.
Now, I know a lot of them are on the fob, but there's still a little piece of metal in there. If you open it up,
right.
It's still in there. You still got some metal in there. So I think a lot of it's just perspective. Sometimes we just don't think the extra steps. and look, take it one step further. We see, it's like you rearrange the furniture in your house, and now all of a sudden everything looks different because it looks different, and I think that's a lot of it. Just we get used to things and we become numb to them.
When you walk by something every day, you at some point stop seeing it. And where this knowledge, understanding more about metals, knowledge translates into magical energy. Now, when you pick that item up, you're picking it up with a deeper magical connection. At that point, you're, like you said, it becomes your ally. This is something that can help you in whatever you're working, whatever your intention, your endeavor is, you now have an ally to help. And in today's world, we all need as many allies as we can get. I'm just like, you need them. And having that connection. And I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to read the book, to really think about metal completely different. And I know I'm going to carry that knowledge and use it. It is applicable, real life knowledge. And I love that.
Now that you know, you
Right.
will always see everything differently now, and it literally changes your life.
Yes.
I think positively, but your life will never be the same now, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's what growth is, right?
Oh, it's brilliant. Yes, and it's nice, like I said, to have a new subject, an old subject, but still for us, it's new. Thinking about primitive blacksmithing, thinking about what the magic of the blacksmith was, and like we were talking earlier, their place in community. These, we lost all that, and it's still there waiting for us.
We've forgotten it. We haven't lost it. It's still there.
Forgot it. Yes.
Yeah,
but
we've just forgotten it.
That's why I said
we don't need a connection to it. We just need a reconnection to it. Because it's already there.
Yeah.
That athame is made out of steel. You have the iron. We already talked about that. You already have a connection. You just aren't aware of it.
And now you are.
Yep.
And so I want to thank you. Like I said, I'll make sure to get information from him to put at the bottom of the video. As I'm doing this, y'all are seeing the stuff down there. If you are interested in learning more about metal magic, getting up into that space, you need to seek out Bo, go spend some time with him. And I just want to, again, I just thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I would like to say one more thing. As always, it's always something else, right? It's something that I do for community, and what I mean for community is community, right? I call it a community forge. Once a month, so 12 times a year, 13, I will do what I call a community forging, and I call it affectionately moon bling, right? And what that is that once a month I will do a forging of some kind, whatever's speaking to me, right? Right now I'm kind of, seems to be on this little bit of a journey. And the cool thing about it is it'll either be on the dark moon or the full moon, okay? Depending on what it is that's being created. And it's all made from the same piece of metal. So no matter where you are that you get shipped, everybody is connected by this one piece of metal. And it's a really reasonable price because it's less than what you would get on the website. And it's not available usually on the website because this is part of my magic. This is part of my offering as a priest of the Morrigan. This is part of my offering to community. And it comes with an activation ritual to help you tune in to create a talisman if you want to do so, or it can just remain a pendant. That's up to the end user. And there's different things. I've done them out of copper, I've done them out of brass, done them out of bronze, done them a couple of months ago. I made copper candle scribes as the monthly moon bling. So there's always something different. So if you'll just kind of follow me on one of the social medias, I'm everywhere, and Taren have the link to it. But I think that's kind of cool because it's unique, and at some point there'll be something that'll speak to you that you can get to help once again aid you in what you want to do, because every month it's different, and it's most of the time there's a sigil involved, so it's not just a hunk of metal. There's usually some juiciness to it. It's created in sacred space, so it's got a hum to it.
I was gonna say, I love this. I'm just like, okay, sign me up.
Yep, actually I've got one from the 21st doing a dark moon forging. So
And like
everybody-
Bo was saying, for those of you that are interested
Mhm.
in what he's doing, reach
Get
out
with
to
me.
him personally and everything. And I want to thank you for joining me today. And of course, to you witches that have watched to the very end, you always know you get a gold star. Leave a comment and I'll give you a gold star. All right. Thank you, all you witches out there, for your support, everything with my channel and all my endeavors. And with that said, get out there, fly your brooms, have a bright, blessed day. And as always, amen, blessed be, ashe, and ebobo.